It's a big stage, I got lost. Good morning, everybody. Your Excellencies, colleagues, friends, distinguished guests, and members of the GRC community. Let me begin by thanking the TSRI and NSERC for hosting this year's Global Council Conference. This venue and the hospitality we've been receiving have simply been amazing. Thank you very much for our host, for showing us your rich cultural traditions. We have a taste of it the last couple of days. It's an honor to present some aspects of the discussion paper that I have prepared. And if you're interested in some of the more detailed references, background, and case studies, feel free to look up the full paper itself. I should also mention that many of the lessons I draw upon are based on a research network on open science in the Global South, funded by IDRC of Canada a few years ago. It's also the IDRC that makes my presence here possible. I would also like to thank Sean Barron for guiding me through the process of the discussion paper and the GRC process. Because I'm not a funder and not familiar with the GRC, Sean's guidance has been very, very invaluable. We also discovered last evening that Sean is quite an energetic dancer, so he's a really multi-talented fellow. My overall message is simple. If open science is to fulfill its promises of addressing the various global challenges that our previous speakers have alluded to, foremost of which is persistent inequality and resilient communities, we need to first ensure that open science itself is built on an equitable foundation. The GRC process is meaningful because it reminds us that open science cannot be advanced from a single national, regional, or institutional perspective. Consensus must be built through dialogue across different histories, capacity, knowledge, traditions, and development priorities. Speaking from Canada, I recognize the contributions Canadian funders have made to open access, research collaboration, knowledge equity, community infrastructure, and more plural approaches to research assessment. But openness by itself is not enough. In Canada, we have learned, and are still learning, that knowledge cannot be separated from colonial history, governance, consent, place, memory, relationships, and above all, community control. Principles such as the First Nations principles of OCAP and Global Indigenous Data Alliance CARE principles remind us that making knowledge open is not the same as making knowledge just. The statement of principle to be endorsed later today marks an important moment for the GRC. It recognizes that open science have moved beyond access alone to ask harder questions. Whose knowledge counts? Who sets research agenda? Who is resourced? And whose benefit from openness? The UNESCO recommendation of open science gives us 4 widely referenced pillars: open scientific knowledge, open infrastructure, open engagement of societal actors, and open dialogue with diverse knowledge system. But implementation has been highly uneven. Global efforts have focused primarily on the first 2 pillars: publication, data, repository, platforms, and interoperability. Pillar 3 and 4, engagement with societal actors and dialogue with other knowledge systems, have lagged behind because they require deeper structural changes in governance, institutional culture, incentives, and research practice. The unevenness matter because open science is still often presented as a technical project. Open publication, share data, build repository, improve machine interoperability, and the benefits will follow. These practices matter, but we have learned that access without equity can actually entrench an ecosystem. Access without co-governance can reproduce extraction. Access without attention to language, culture, infrastructure, history, and power can widen the inequalities that open science is meant to address. So my key message is that the 4 pillars should not be treated as separate work streams. They are better understood as an interconnected knowledge ecology. Equity, diversity, inclusion, and epistemic justice are not just add-ons to that ecology. They are the architecture of stewardship and care that makes open science possible. Now, this has practical implications. Funding calls should address the 4 pillars together: how outputs are shared, who governs the knowledge, who benefit, what infrastructures are used, what engagement is built in, and how indigenous, local, community protocols are respected. And funders should require equity and knowledge governance plans, not only data management plans. They should be addressing consent, community authority, benefit sharing, data sovereignty, multilingual access, and the possibility that some knowledge should not be shared openly at all. Funders should also resource the infrastructure of stewardship and care. This means relationship building, translation, community facilitation, indigenous and local knowledge stewardship, and long-term maintenance and knowledge mobilization beyond academic audiences. I stress the maintenance of infrastructure because these are the kind of areas that are often underfunded without predictable funding, and this is an area that needs to be addressed. Now, in terms of community governance and non-commercial infrastructure, Diamond Open Access is an important example. Long before the term became globally visible, Latin American initiatives such as Cialo, Redalex, and La Referencia show that scholarly communication can be public, regional, multilingual, and not dependent on charging readers or authors. Funders should strengthen these accomplishments, as the recent Bangalore roadmap on Diamond Open Access also emphasizes. And so these are not models that are built around commercial platform or article processing charges. And these initiatives and other emerging ones deserve consistent, stable funding. At the same time, review, assessment, and monitoring should align with these values of public goods. Monitoring should also monitoring should ask who shaped the agenda, who governs the data, whether those under-resourced regions can gain ownership and capacity, and whether communities can act on knowledge produced with their input. These actions move open science from principles to practice. They also show why the pillars are streams intertwined rather than independent work area. And if dialogue with indigenous, local, and place-based knowledge system is seen as optional, open science will continue to privilege dominant institutions, languages, metrics, and epistemologies. So dialogue with other knowledge systems is not a nice to have. It is what makes open science know its own limit as well as its potential. And it is not simply about involving more voices into the pre-existing structure. It requires us to ask who builds the space, who sets the terms, and whether the structure itself needs to be changed. Indigenous, local, community, and practice-based knowledge are not raw materials to be extracted, translated, and validated by dominant science. They are knowledge systems with their own history, protocol, responsibilities, and forms of accountability. And respectful dialogue is also a matter of institutional design. Inclusion cannot still inclusion can still leave power untouched. Communities and knowledge holders may be invited into advisory roles while decision-making authority remains with those who control the agenda, budget, data infrastructures, and the interpretation of those results. So open dialogue requires shared authority and co-governance, including the possibilities that communities may define openness in their own terms. In some contexts, not sharing data widely may be the more ethical choice. So as open as possible, as secure as necessary, is not a retreat from open science. In fact, it is a condition for practicing it responsibly. This is why equity and epistemic justice should be built into open science policies from the beginning. Equity should inform funding rules, eligibility criteria, assessment practices, data governance, partnership models, monitoring system, and even the definition of excellence itself. So infrastructures are not just repository, platforms, standards, and metadata. Infrastructure is the relationship, capacity, protocol, and the trust that makes knowledge sharing meaningful, safe, and accountable. Stewardship with care is infrastructure. And no single funder and community can transform open science alone, but funder and research communities collectively can shape incentive, infrastructures, assessment cultures, and international norms. This gives the GRC a very special responsibility: value alignment without cloning of policy, and coordination across differences strong enough to prevent injustice, but flexible enough to respect regional history, languages, epistemologies, capabilities, and priorities. Research assessment reform is crucial to this collective work. Many barriers already have been identified by the GRC working group, by organizations such as DORA and other reform efforts. The question now is coordinated action, aligning funding criteria, peer review, institutional incentives, and monitoring systems so that stewardship, openness, collaboration, multilingualism, and community engagement are recognized as core contributions to research excellence. So let me return to the idea of the 4 pillars. Pillars suggest separate structures, but open science is not a temple built from these 4 independent columns. It is more like a living knowledge ecology. Publication, data, infrastructure, community, language, protocol, history, and above all, people are all intertwined. The visible canopy, the health of the visible canopy depends on the health of the roots. And the roots are equity, trust, reciprocity, stewardship, care, and justice. So I would like to applaud members of the GRC for not only making science open, but also honoring the commitment to make science more just, more inclusive, and sustainable, and more worthy of public trust. Thank you.